All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Midtown Spotlight. My name is Natalie Graham, and on today's show, we have Al here, our Midtown Handyman. Al is a reliable, multi-skilled, experienced handyman. He's been doing this for 15 years, and he works on both residential and commercial properties here in Toronto and the surrounding GTA. He's well known for solving almost any technical challenge, which I know we all appreciate, especially those of you out there that are like me and either don't know how to fix things or you're just impatient like me and never devote enough time to fix these things or just don't know how to get started. So we definitely need people like you in our lives, Al. So welcome. Thanks for joining us today. How are you doing?
Glad to be here. Very good, thank you.
Awesome.
Always happy to talk to people dedicating themselves to Midtown and stuff. That's why we're Midtown Handyman. We really try to highlight that and stay in our area. But we, as you say, we do go outside. But yeah, I've been living in Midtown for 15 years, and I love the area, and the clients are good, and glad to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. So, Al, tell me a bit about Midtown Handyman. I know it's all in the title, but give us an overview about what you do.
So most of our stuff is sort of electrical or plumbing. So light fixtures, plugs, outlets, replacing faucets, clogged drains, toilet repairs, and then sort of hanging stuff. Curtains, curtain rods, blinds, TV mounts, that sort of stuff. But really, I really do enjoy a puzzle and a challenge, and people have all kinds of odds and ends, and that always makes the day interesting. Trying to solve those problems. I love puzzles.
Yeah, okay, that's great. I'm sure that you get a lot of puzzles. And how does it go when people give you challenges that you've never done before? How do you approach it?
That's the thrill of it. I mean, some of them I can sort of recognize that it's it might be time to call like a dedicated specialist, but I'm happy to try, and most of the times I'm successful. Sometimes when I'm not, I just won't charge for the time. And uh, like I say, I really, really do love puzzles. So one of my friends said, "For you, this is like playing with Legos, and then you get paid at the end of the day." And when he said that, it made a lot of sense to me. And that's really key, and I hope maybe even some young people are listening. But finding a job that really fits you is is really is really something, and it's something that's undervalued, and we seem to be rushed in our choices of careers. So like they say, if you find a job that you love, you won't have to work a day in your life. And even if I do try to solve a challenge and I'm not successful, it's still fun, and you learn something from it. But it rarely happens. On the onset, you're a little bit have some trepidation if it's a like a weird new thing, but it usually works out.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's absolutely true. And I hope that we have some young people listening because even if you don't get it right the first time, you still learn something great from it, right? And if you like what you're doing, especially you can
Yes.
enjoy those challenging aspects. So tell me, how did you even get into this field? Were you always into projects like this growing up, or how did you get into it as a career?
Well, growing up, I'm originally from Serbia, and people are a little bit, mm, for whatever reason, have to do things themselves, and ask a neighbor for help, and it becomes sort of a do it yourself is a lot more prevalent there. I feel Western society is a little bit over specialized and overworked in terms of time uh, constraints, and there isn't a lot of time. So you always sort of do your own stuff. And my dad would, give me a little tool set and pair of pliers and screwdriver, and always bring me along whatever he was doing around the house or at neighbors. He's a mechanical engineer, electrical as well. Once he came to Canada, and then in Canada, we would one of our home businesses was purchasing houses, renovating them, and renting them out. And my father, believed that you have to do everything yourself. Nobody knows what they're doing. Everybody's a crook, that kind of stuff. So we ended up doing absolutely everything ourselves on the side while we were doing our regular day jobs. And my regular day job actually was a property manager for condominiums, nonprofits, co-ops. And I did that for 13 years. And tends to be a little bit of an underpaid profession compared to the what is asked of you. That's because there's a little bit of funny business sometimes on the side that some people do, and therefore they're willing to take a lower salary. And I wasn't down with that. I asked them for a fair pay, and they sent me to a nightmarish condo where the half the building was suing the other half of the building. I got hired by one side, by one faction, and worked there for a year and a half. Then the other faction won the election, and then they were pressing me to leave so they can bring in their own people and do their own kind of stuff. Anyways, so my wife, I was helping a friend move into a new apartment. She was recently divorced, couldn't afford a lot of stuff, so she asked me could I help her out. And I said of course. I came by, I switched out some light fixtures, hung some pictures, assembled some furniture. And when I came home, my wife was like, it sounds weird, but we're lighthearted. She was like, there's a lot of divorced women in Yonge and Eglinton. You could do this as a job. So she sort of was joking, but she was also kind of saying, this is something that's in demand. And I put out an ad, in the meanwhile, trying to come up with a business plan and all that, because I have a university degree in business. And I had no time for that. I just got booked right up, and realized how much I like it. And the worst part about it was regretting the 13 years that I spent in an office, because I'm not really an office person. I like the human interaction, and I like new stuff, and working with my hands and all that. And yeah, couldn't be happier.
Yeah, okay. No, that's amazing. Thank you. I love hearing the story of how you got to kind of where you are. So, and I mean that's funny that your wife or your wife's friend mentioned like, "Oh yeah, you should just do this."
My wife said, yeah,
Your wife.
go out and do this.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, here when people are selecting their career, they're sort of rushed. People should have time. Kids should be given time to volunteer, to do co-ops, to try out jobs, to even if you're a cleaner in an engineering company, it will give you an idea of what that environment and work is like. You'll make friends. They'll show you, So whatever you can do to sort of get your foot in the door in the businesses that you're interested in,
Yeah.
because a lot of people, dedicate so much of their lives only to realize, well, I wasn't really happy with this. So choose carefully.
Yeah, absolutely. And at least I can imagine there'd be a little bit of overlap. You said you were in property management before, right? So a little bit of overlap with you're kind of in the home sector at least. So were you able to use some of those skills in property management with this current business or not as much?
Oh, sure. It's more on the administrative side, and it also gave me a bit of an impetus to jump in the field, and to listen to my wife, because I saw I was signing a lot, or preparing a lot of the checks for the contractors, and frankly, some of the people that were doing the work weren't all that professional. You always think, these are professionals, but some of them I realized weren't. And so I sort of said, wait a second, what am I doing? What are they doing? And that sort of helped. But yes, of course, the property management is sort of a general knowledge field. And you learn something from everything and everybody if you're so inclined.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Okay, so let's press rewind for a second. Let's imagine you're on your first day or your first week, first month of being a handyman. What's changed in your business since you first started doing this compared to now?
Okay. Well, it's got originally, actually, I was, because living in Midtown is so great as far as walkability and all that. Originally, I was running my business on a bicycle. I was I We would rent cars all the time. Enterprise used to have like a $37 weekend, and we figured we don't need a car except on the weekend sometimes. And even when we rented a car, we noticed that our lives got a lot more busier. And if we didn't, we would make do kind of thing. So I was really, and for environmental reasons and things like that, and monetary reasons, we prioritize what we spend on and did not have a car. So I have two kids and I have a back seat. I had a back seat on the bicycle and a little cart. Not a cart, but like a
Like a
carton, like a milk
basket?
carton. Right,
Oh,
basket, right, sorry. On the front, thank you. And I basically had a backpack with tools, one bag on the bicycle seat and one bag in the basket. And then going on the job, two hands, two bags, and a backpack. And yeah, I would do that even in winter, all that. Sometimes if I was in a rush, I took some falls, but that's only because I was in a rush. But since then, things got busier, and I couldn't handle the workload. I was increasing my hourly rate up to a point where I said, okay, I can't reasonably increase it anymore, yet I'm still overbooked. And I started, as I said, in Serbia, we tend to be, Eastern Europe in general, I guess, tend to be handy. And I approached some of my friends that were unemployed, underemployed, or bored or whatever. And I said, hey, man, you know how to do this, or you might not know how to do that. Come along, I'll show you. And then, so yeah, I have two employees, part-time and flexible. At times, it's even a lot more when it's really, really busy, but it can vary. And yeah, I had to get a car because if they're on a job, I need to appear there and support them. It gives them the bravery, so to say, to attack new challenges, knowing that I'm there and that I can drive up with a car that already has all the tools in the back, no matter where they are, and help them out. So yeah, have had a car for a while now. Um, Otherwise, the work is relatively similar. Like I say, you have your bread and butter, and then new, weird, challenging stuff.
yeah, yeah. No, that's amazing. And thank goodness you could get that car. Because I would imagine in the wintertime, biking might not always be the best option. And now you get to carry all your tools with you and get everywhere a bit quicker. But I guess depending on parking, I know parking in the
But
city is a bit of a nightmare, right?
yes, some condos, some condos don't even have proper visitor parking, and yeah, it's getting tougher. Yeah, the parking aspect was definitely a change, but yeah, of course, having a car has its pros, and my parents are getting older, and so are my wives, and it makes it easier to visit.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned at the beginning of our chat, some of the projects and things that you do. Is there anything in particular this fall that you've been focusing on, or you just find more clients are asking for?
Uh, that's a little bit weird, but there's been a whole lot of clogged toilets recently.
Oh
And
no.
to tell you the truth, no, I love it. I mean, it sounds weird, but surprisingly, most of the times when you show up, it doesn't look it looks clean kind of thing. The problem is down there kind of thing. So it's not as as disturbing as some might think, but it's part of the job. And that panic that people feel when when their toilet is clogged, I'm glad to show up quickly with the specialized tools and get that done. And it's also one of those jobs that is plumbing in particular is not really as complicated once you have the experience. And people value it very much. And on those type of jobs, it's easy to leave the customer super satisfied because their expectations are different versus something like drywall repair, which people look at and they go, yeah, just a hole in the wall. Can you fix that and paint it? It sounds really simple, but by the time you take into account drying time, layers of plaster, sanding, painting, matching, drying time again with the paint, it turns into quite a headache, and people don't quite value it as much. So the clogged toilets have been welcome. I don't know what's happening. I don't know why, but there it is. You asked,
Yeah.
and I had to tell you.
Yeah, and we need working toilets. It's one of those luxuries. Maybe we take advantage of it, but you need a working toilet. That's for
Once
sure.
you don't have it, yeah, things are very you miss it.
Absolutely. Now, one thing I was curious about when I knew I was going to be interviewing you is, this year in the housing market has been a very unusual one. So I was curious to know, because you're in so many homes and in so many condos on a weekly basis, do you find that what's happening in the housing market affects, the types of projects you do, or how many projects do you do, or you find they're kind of separate?
I tend not to focus on some of the larger projects like renovation of a kitchen or what have you, because for those projects, people expect you to be there, every day, all day, get it done, in and out kind of things, stop the disturbance to the family life. So because I like flexibility in my own personal time with the kids and everything, I tend not to take those projects. And I imagine that type of stuff is affected more. My stuff is more day to day and whatnot, so it doesn't seem to be affected by the housing market quite as much. Interestingly, it tends to be affected by weather. Um, so like springtime, the spring cleaning kind of thing, a whole lot of projects, even though 95% of my work is indoors, it really shouldn't be affected. But people sort of get into that mentality, and when they're saying, okay, I want to clean up the house, they also want to clean up all the sort of handyman projects, and it tends to be busier. And also I notice if the weather improves, whatever that means, so it can be cloudy for a number of days and then get sunny, the business goes up, or it can be -10 for a while and then it's zero, people will call more. I guess it gives people the pep and the energy, or something. But it's
Uh,
remarkable how weather related it is.
yeah,
And
that
on a
makes
rainy, gloomy
sense.
day, you very rarely, things go down, other than the necessities.
Yeah, that makes sense now that you say it, that it's affected more by the weather. I mean, I even operate the same way in my place. Like I all of a sudden think of all these things I want to do with my condo, especially on like that first spring day. And there's that fresh sun and fresh air, and you open up the windows for the first time. All of a sudden you're like, I gotta update or change things or whatever you want to do, right?
Yeah, some things tend to bother people, but they sort of put it off. And then when they get that sort of extra pep of energy, I guess we're all so busy and time constraints, but when they get that extra time or energy to call, they're so happy. They're like, oh, I've been putting this off for 2 months, and I'm so happy you're here. And it's so nice to have a job where people are happy to see it. As a property manager, rarely do people come into the office and say, hey, guess what, the elevators are working fine, the hallways are clean, nothing's broken, we thought we'd come by and say nice job. No, it's only complaints and well, not only, but a lot of that kind of frustration stuff. So it's nice to be welcomed, when you show up for your job.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I've got one last question for you here. I can't believe that it's already almost half an hour. Time really flies. This has been great. But yeah, one last question. So, I think a lot of people listening, including myself, we want to become more handy. So if you could pick one thing that you've learned or one thing you do that you think everybody should learn if given the opportunity, what would that be?
Well, I'll give you a few tips. Sometimes I see sort of damage or things that have gone wrong that could have been prevented. And then sometimes I'm also called for jobs that frankly are, you know, silly or preventable. So, for example, most people know, but particularly people that are renting out their condos as sort of investment properties, they don't take the time to show their tenants, things like where to shut the water off, where the electrical breakers are, where the secondary dryer vent, the dryer trap usually in the ceiling above the dryer in condos. You know, that thing needs to be cleaned like every 3 months or so. And I've been to houses where it's been, or condos that have been neglected for like a year and a half, and it's a fire hazard in condos that don't vacuum it and do preventive maintenance on it. So show your tenant around. It can prevent a lot of headaches as far as insurance claims and things like that. I myself have had a situation where I grabbed the handle of the shower and it stayed in my hand and the water was spraying at the wall behind me, kind of thing. So that's not the time to be learning things. Then also fridges. You know, fridges used to have like sort of a fence behind them in the old times that was dissipating the heat. Now they rolled that thing up and shoved it under the fridge, and it can get coated with dust again. And so if you have a pull-out fridge that's not part of the kitchen, you pull it out, and at the bottom there's these sort of gills that you should vacuum. Otherwise, the coating of the dust causes your fridge to use a lot more electricity, and eventually the compressor will die from overheating because it can't throw out the heat. And then you have to buy a new fridge because compressors are expensive. And then for some other ones that are built in kind of thing, it's sort of on the floor in front. And we now have the European washers, the side loaders. And sometimes I see people, it tends to develop a smell, and people keep the door closed, which makes it even moldier and smellier. After every load, you can open the door, and most people know how to do that. They have had those washers before. Also, open up the detergent tray a little bit. It sort of, because of a chimney effect, it dries quicker and prevents slime in the tray and all that. And lastly, the filters, the air filters in people's units. So most of the time you'll have your condo come in and replace the filters. But those are something like 20% efficiency and only catch the largest dust particles, and they're designed to protect the motor and the interior of the fan coil units. But for your own sort of health reasons, you can pick up a much better, more efficient filter at Home Depot or Canadian Tire, and it improves the air quality. And for even depending on how high you want to go for the filters, even pollen and smoke and things like that. So that would be my tips.
Wow, that's great. And these are all really easy things. You probably saw me. I'm not even kidding. I wrote these 4 tips down for myself because it's like, oh, yeah, that's so easy. I can do that. So I'm already going to be more handy after our conversation. This is great.
There you go. Share the
Okay.
knowledge.
Share knowledge, exactly. So before we wrap up today here, Al, if anyone watching or listening wants to get in touch with you, they want to see if you can do something in their home, what's the best way to reach out to you and find out more information about your business?
You can reach me directly on my cell. Texting is best because it gives me the flexibility of putting down my tools at a later time. So 647-947-1124 by text. You can also call. And then if you just want some general information for future, our website is midtownhm.ca. So Midtown Handyman kind of thing.ca.
Okay, that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for this conversation. This has been great. So I have been chatting with Al here from Midtown Handyman, and I'm Natalie Graham, your Keller Williams Leaside Realtor and Park Bench local leader. Have a great day, everyone, and stay tuned for the next episode. All right, that's a wrap for today's episode of Midtown Spotlight. If you would like to like, comment, or share this video, please feel free to do so and share it with someone else that you think would enjoy it. I know that I learned a lot on this episode with the handyman, and Al had some really great tips for us, and I can't wait to use some of those on my day-to-day life in my condo. So let's remember to support local. If you know of any businesses that would like to be featured, please let me know, and I would be happy to interview them. All right, that's a wrap for today. Bye, everyone.